Welcome into the Look Right Naked podcast. I'm your host, Eric Bach, and today we're going to jump into a Q&A session. Now, I do these Q&A sessions about once per week. I throw up a question box over on Instagram at Bach Performance, generally on Monday or Tuesday. So whenever you see those, make sure you are following at Bach Performance and drop your questions. I can answer them live directly here so I can give you the most specific help possible. All right, so question number one, how often should I be doing shoulder mobility work? The answer is you should be doing this daily. When you think about it, your average day, you are spending so much time keeled over your smartphone, internally rotated when you're driving, when you're sitting in front of a computer. And then most people will go directly from that position and go right into the gym and start training. And voila, shoulder issues happen. Shoulder injuries, incredibly common. And so what we need to think about is if we want to be able to improve posture, if we want to be able to improve shoulder health, we need to work on these things daily to combat the postures that we are in on a daily basis. So what I recommend are two key exercises. First, a band dislocation. You see a lot of people do a dislocation type movement when it comes to being in the gym, but they will use something like a wooden dowel. The issue with a wooden dowel is it's going to be ultra restrictive and not really conducive if you have a difference in mobility between your left or your right shoulder. So when you use a band, I like to use like a 1/8 or a 1/4 inch mini band. You can find those, the powerlifting bands, you can find them everywhere from Elite FTS to grabbing some cheap ones over on Amazon and do band dislocations. I will do 50 of those per day. I'll break it up, throughout the day consistently. So I improve that shoulder mobility. So we have to think about, first, we want to improve shoulder mobility so we get out of that kind of locked up, internally rotated caveman posture that we all live most of the day in. So once we've improved our mobility, increased the range of motion, we want to activate the muscles on the backside of your body to be able to help stabilize that range of motion, right? So activate and mobilize, and then we want to stabilize. And so a band pull apart, the big thing here you can use the same band and you're simply going to pull the band apart. And all the movement needs to come through shoulder retraction. A lot of people mess these up and get a tricep pump because they're pumping their elbows like they're getting ready to go on Jersey Shore. No, the reality is you want to have the band, your elbows locked out, and you're simply retracting your shoulders. I like to do a double overhand grip, but then you can change angles. You can go one arm a little bit higher, one arm a little bit lower. And that way you can train the stabilizers within your shoulder blades, within your upper body to be able to have a stronger, more stable shoulder girdle with many different ranges. When you think about the shoulder, it's a hypermobile joint. We're moving through different ranges all the time. And because it's hypermobile and it can do all this cool shit, well, we tend to run into more issues, right? Because there's inherently going to be a trade-off between mobility of a joint and stability. And so if we're not practically and sustainably building that stability with the shoulder by doing something like a band dislocation followed by a band pull apart, then we're going to struggle. So in terms of daily mobility work, I would focus on those. In addition, I'm a huge fan of bottoms up kettlebell presses. You can incorporate this exercise directly before an upper body pushing day. And so with a bottoms up kettlebell press, essentially you have the kettlebell upside down, you're holding, pressing directly overhead. Now you're going to have to go very light on this exercise because the stability demands are insane and your grip is going to get worked quite a bit as well. But when you develop that crushing grip and then you're pressing overhead with an exercise like a bottoms up kettlebell press, you're going to be building a ton of stabilization all the way through the torso and the shoulder girdle. There's this principle called irradiation, which essentially means when we're contracting muscles as hard as we can, we're going to innervate the muscles that are around it and create more stabilization. So when you have to create that crushing grip directly on a bottoms up press, that's going to be a great way to do it. So if I'm looking at what a daily routine would look like, I'll do band dislocations and band pull aparts, 50 reps each day. If I am doing an upper body lifting session, I want to spice it up a little bit. I'll do the band dislocations, the band pull aparts, and I'll use a bottoms up kettlebell press. Maybe I'll do like 2 sets of 6 to 8, just enough to turn the lights on and get that stability firing up. Question number 2, should I eat before early morning workouts? Pre-workout nutrition is something that's highly specific. If you are somebody who performs your best when you do have food in your stomach, then it's going to be optimal. But if you're compromising your ability to sleep to try to get a full meal in, it's not going to be the best. Also, if you feel nauseous, if you have solid food in your stomach before you go into the gym, that's going to negatively impact your performance, even if all the research says you're going to do better when you're in a fueled state, right? Like that's the difference. That's the thing you have to understand about some of the research gurus and whatever you see on Instagram these days. You have to understand what's going to be practical in the real world, not just apply things directly because a research study with, 17 college age males who live on vodka and, mac and cheese said it's going to work, right? That doesn't work for most people. So if you're going to be eating before most early morning workouts, what I would recommend would be just something small. It could be, half a cup of oatmeal and protein powder, something very simple. It could be a piece of fruit and a protein shake if you're on your way to the gym. Personally, if I'm doing an early morning workout, I like to be in a fasted state. I'll try to get 20 to 40 ounces of water in me beforehand. We have to get hydrated. We have to get more fluid going directly inside of our body. Specifically, if you're going to do any heavy axial loading, we need to get fluid in our body so we can start to hydrate the intervertebral discs in your spine, which is crucial for not only performance, but also preventing back pain and injuries. When I'm doing that workout individually, again, I'll have some caffeine. It could be a pre-workout. It could be coffee in addition to that water. And then I'll have highly branched cyclic dextrin with some essential aminos. Honestly, those are more for flavor, but that'll give me some quick power, more or less, 30 grams of carbohydrates that our body's going to take and use right away in those exercises. And I'll sip on that. And then I'll have a meal directly after your workouts. The biggest thing for early morning workouts is find what you can do comfortably that's not going to negatively impact your performance, and getting that hydration dialed in. You're going to have better performance across the board, reduce injury risk, and set the table for a successful day when it comes to hydration, since the majority of us are underhydrated throughout the entire day. All right, third question. What is the best recovery for busy people? The best recovery for busy people is the best recovery for non-busy people. It doesn't make a difference, and it really comes down to the way that you're going to prioritize it. A lot of people are looking at cold showers, red light therapy, like all this cool shit that's coming out right now. And no doubt it is cool, but nothing is going to match up to getting good quality sleep at night. Nothing is going to match up to reducing stressful inputs that you can in your life, whether that means removing people, getting yourself out of certain situations, and doing that to reduce overall stress. The biggest thing with training and recovery is a lot of people focus so much on the training component without adequate focus directly on the recovery, right? And so if you're chronically stressed from many different areas of life, not just what you're doing in the gym, but your personal life, your professional life, that is all going to negatively impact what you do in the gym. So here are a few considerations. The more stress that you have from different areas of your life, the less stressful your training should be. And this can be really difficult if you use your training as a way to quote unquote reduce stress. It can help with that overall endorphin rush, but if you do too much of it, you're creating a stress load that your body cannot recover from. In long term, that's just going to run you directly into the ground. So you have to make sure that you're programming things like your workouts, your nutrition in tandem with what's going on in your lifestyle. That's where most people get really stuck with their overall approach. They just do workouts that are hard, nutrition that's aggressive, but they don't factor in how these things play off of each other. Next, we want to make sure we're getting good quality sleep. I like to use the 10, 3, 2, 1, 0 method. So 10 hours before bed, cut out caffeine. 3 hours before bed, cut out food. 2 hours before bed, cut out ideally any work so you can disconnect, be present, and unwind. 1 hour before bed, try to get rid of blue light and looking at screens. If you can throw on glasses like I've got here, that's a great option for you as well. But all of those things are going to help support optimal sleep. If you can't make time for a ton of sleep, you have to do everything that you can to dial in the quality of your sleep. Helpful things there beyond the 10, 3, 2, 1, 0 method. And the 0, by the way, means 0 times you hit snooze if you follow that consistently, would be magnesium, specifically magnesium glycinate or magnesium threonate at night, about an hour before bed. Those can be incredibly helpful. If you're somebody who is consistently keyed up throughout the day and you're having a lot of caffeine, having theanine in the afternoon can be very helpful. And even taurine later in the afternoon can be a helpful supplement, as that can actually serve as a precursor for natural creation of melatonin directly inside of your body. So that's something you want to consider in regards to getting the sleep aspect dialed in. And then, of course, I mentioned before, reducing stressful inputs. If you have people that are chronically causing a lot of stress in your life, do the best that you can to separate from those toxic people, right? Ultimately, it's your life. You got to decide how you want to be able to live things. And this can be a very difficult thing. But if you have family members, if you have people at work, people who historically have been good friends, but every time you talk to them, they bring you down, they add more stress, I think it's helpful to consider what value is that directly bringing to your life if that stress for you is not allowing you to show up as the best version of yourself for the other people that matter for you in all these different areas, right? I mean, that's the thing you're going to have to look at personally, but I think it's an important consideration to make if you are chronically stressed. And of course, control what you can, cope with what you can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. That's a very important component of stress management as well. All right, the fourth question, how to meet your macros with intermittent fasting for 16 hours. So inherently, one of the issues, you can consider it an issue for intermittent fasting, is the ability to hit your macros, hit enough calories, right? Because with intermittent fasting, we're using the time duration in which you eat, limiting it to 8 hours throughout the day as a way to control for calories, which is why intermittent fasting can work very well for fat loss. And it can work very well for even weight loss maintenance or just weight maintenance in general. Inherently, it's also more difficult to build lean muscle, which is why you get these fucking idiots on social media who want to say intermittent fasting is best for everything because they're looking at growth hormone levels and all these little transient things, when in reality, they're missing the forest for the trees, right? Like the most important reason intermittent fasting works well for a lot of people for fat loss is exactly why it's difficult for a lot of people to build any muscle or even optimize performance on it. It doesn't mean that it's a terrible diet. It just means you have to apply it in the right direction. Now, getting back on track with that, the way I like to think about setting up your macronutrients would be, first, we have to be in alignment with your goals. And so like, let's say the example here is you have 2,000 calories. Okay. So we have 8 hours to eat 2,000 calories, focusing on, say, a 30, 40, 30 split. This would be about 150 grams of protein, 600 calories from protein, about 200 grams of carbohydrates, 800 calories, and about 66 grams of fat, which is another 600 or so calories, right? Like that puts us right at 2,000. And so if we have that as what our overall number is, the best way to do it is to break this up into 3 meals that are going to be split across that time duration. And so I like to think about it like you're having one meal that, maybe is your lunch. That's your first meal, a snack in the middle. This could be like a post-workout shake, something like that. And then your last meal would be your dinner for the night. And so if we break this down, this would be 3 even meals of 50 grams of protein, 65 grams of carbohydrates, and 22 grams of fat, right? If we break it up that way, that's how we can hit 3 meals that equal out to 2,000 calories and enough protein, carbohydrates, yada, 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 to be able to get where we want. And so what does this actually look like? As a ballpark, this would be about 6 ounces of 90% lean beef, 1 sweet potato or a cup of rice, and then, say 1 to 2 cups of vegetables, right? Like that could be a meal that you have twice. You can flip out the different protein, account for what the fat difference is going to be within that, and that's going to put you in a good ballpark. Same thing with the carbohydrates and sweet potatoes. It could be sweet potatoes. It could be a cup of rice, whatever your body's going to handle, that takes care of those particular meals. Now, with your training specifically, using the example here that maybe you're training in the afternoon, well, what we have is we have 2 scoops of, say, whey protein or plant protein, whatever is going to serve you best, a piece of fruit before your training, and then 1 scoop of highly branched cyclic dextrin during your training, right? That itself is going to, again, be close to that 50 grams of protein, 65 grams of carbs, and your fat. You might have to titrate things up and down just a little bit from that point, but that's really going to be directly up to you, okay? So again, it just comes down to reverse engineering that process and getting those meals as consistent and clean as you possibly can. The more consistent you are with your meal choices, the better off you are going to be overall with your results. All right, over 50 years old, how can you manage explosive training with building muscle? Okay, so inherently, when we are training explosively, we are training for speed. We need maximal recovery. When we are building muscle, there are some instances where we have maximum recovery with heavier loading, but there are also other times where we have incomplete rest because we're focusing on a different component of building muscle, which is metabolic stress, aka the pump. Okay. So here's what we need to understand. It's possible to get more explosive and to build muscle, but the mechanisms are often indirect. And so let me explain what that means. When we are trying to get explosive, we need full recovery, not just of your cardiovascular system, but from your muscular system, from your central nervous system, because explosiveness is inherently derived from being able to perform an exercise with maximum explosive intent. And so what a lot of people do is they struggle to optimally recover when they do explosive exercises. You see people doing like box jumps with very short rest periods. You see them doing explosive exercises, medicine ball throws, treating it like cardiovascular exercise. And because they don't inherently recover from it, voila, they're not actually getting more explosive. They are just doing these exercises that inherently should help them get more explosive. It's just a misappropriation of how they're actually doing it. Okay. So we need complete rest so you can maximally generate force on each and every single rep. I can't explain how important this is, right? I recall working with elite level athletes, working with NFL athletes getting ready for the combine. And an example could be they might do a heavy squat for 2 or 3 reps and a box jump using something like post-activation potentiation or complex training. And it might be a 3 to 5 minute rest. Like they only did 2 or 3 reps and they only did 2 or 3 jumps, but because they're focused on generating as much force as humanly possible with each one of those reps, well, they need to recover from it. And that recovery happens to require longer rest for your central nervous system to be able to generate explosive force like that again. And so a lot of people will look at athletic training programs and think, oh, I just need to do box jumps or explosive shit. And the reality is, if you use this inappropriately, you're not going to get any more explosive. You're just going to be, doing these exercises and maybe having a very small benefit instead of a massive one is going to really transform the way that you train or the way that you perform. Okay, off of that specific soapbox, here's what I would recommend. We want to incorporate explosive exercises that are joint friendly in the beginning of your training. So you go through a warm up, and before you start your core exercises, you're going to want to do things like, for example, a box jump. Okay. Box jump is going to be incredibly joint friendly when you jump up on the box, because the height of the box is going to really reduce the impact of your fall. You don't need to try to land softly either, because the box height is really going to dictate that if you jump onto a 24-inch box, your feet might be 2 inches off of it. You're only having that 2 inches. Like trying to land soft on your toes is just going to lead to technical issues that can, predispose you to more injuries. So explosive exercise, it could be a box jump. A broad jump is a little bit less joint friendly, but it works. A squat jump before a lower body exercise. You could even do a explosive kettlebell swing before. And this would be somewhere in the range of 3 sets of 5 to 8 repetitions and 90 to 2 minutes recovery, so you can maximally generate force again when you do that next one. We don't want to put these all into a circuit. We don't want to turn this into some Orange Theory-esque, like athletic performance type circuit training class. Like we do not want to do that shit. Okay. So we have to be explosive on that first exercise with maximum explosive intent and full recovery. Next, we want to reinforce your strength base. Especially as you're getting older, we want to make sure we maintain as much strength as we can, but do so in a joint friendly way. When we think about being explosive comes down to being relatively stronger for your size. And so if we look at being stronger for your size, you need the combination of high enough absolute strength and a body weight that's appropriate. Okay. And so when we build and maintain as much top end strength, it becomes easier to move our body through space to generate a lot more force, even at lower resistance, right? And so by reinforcing that strength base, staying strong on big movement patterns like a squat pattern, a hinge pattern, a pressing pattern, a pulling pattern, you can reinforce that strength base, which inherently is going to help you stay stronger. It's going to help you recruit more fast twitch muscle fibers, which leads to more explosiveness. Then finally, of course, with building muscle, the components are the same. We need enough mechanical tension, so heavy weight through a full range of motion, and metabolic stress, which is the pump. So you'd start that workout with that with that explosive exercise with full recovery. We'd move to a heavier compound exercise to build and reinforce strength. And as the workout ensues, then we can start to reduce the rest period, increase the reps, and allow some of the other factors that can drive muscle growth really come together. So a workout like this, what could it look like? It could be a box jump, 3 sets of 5, rest for 2 minutes. You can go to a barbell back squat, 4 sets of 6 reps, 2 to 3 minutes rest recovery. Third exercise could be a Bulgarian split squat, 3 sets of 6 to 8, or even 8 to 12 reps with 2 minutes recovery. And then say a dumbbell Romanian deadlift for 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps. That would just be a very quick example of how you can be explosive in the beginning, activate more high threshold motor units, which can help you recruit more muscle fibers and train them later on. And then as fatigue begins to build up, we can create more of that muscle building response as we go. Finally, how do you deal with eating out socially with groups and friends? I do well with my diet when I have complete control of it, but when the social environment comes, I tend to go with the crowd. All right, so there are a couple lines of thought here. Number one is you can just white knuckle it and say, forget what everybody else thinks. You're going to do your thing because you have bigger goals. That works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. And so what I would think about just from a perspective is, most people know what to do when it comes to eating healthier at restaurants. They just tend to go with the flow and with the crowd. And so it can help to step back and think, what matters to me more? Eating the exact same way as somebody else to maybe avoid a comment, and that comment probably isn't even going to happen. We tend to blow these things out of proportion in our own heads, or staying on track with my goals where I'm not subconsciously thinking about oh my gosh, I'm not following my diet. I'm not enjoying this experience. And then you're beating yourself up after the meal and trying to make up for lost ground later on. It's important just to have that conversation and that thought process beforehand so you can approach it with a plan of action. So a few things that I would do. One, if you know that you're going to be eating out, with friends, with family, and it's going to be an environment where it's not going to be conducive to be perfect on your diet, is plan ahead. Nail the rest of the week beforehand and then use this as a reward, right? Every week we make pizza as a family. It's glorious. I love pizza. I'm not taking pizza out of my diet. Not even one getting photo shoot shredded. Not going to happen. And so comes down to making adjustments throughout the rest of the week. Can we taper calories down in different areas? Can we stay cleaner with our food choices and build a buffer so we can enjoy those foods, so we can have that freedom and that flexibility while also looking, feeling, and performing our best? Next, if you can look ahead at where you might be going to a restaurant, well, you can check out what's going to be on the menu and you can plan to make a better choice directly with it. You could even look ahead and you can be the person who plans the event, and then you can look at the restaurant and then you can be the one who picks out what restaurant it is, right? Like that's something very simple. So a lot of it comes down to taking control of the situation and making the best choice directly for yourself by looking ahead of time versus being reactive in the moment when we tend to be more likely to go with the crowd. A couple other strategies. Earlier in the day, you can focus on something like intermittent fasting while focusing on plants and protein. That's going to help you control for calories and build a bigger buffer later on. And of course, again, adjusting throughout the week to pull calories back a little bit if you know you're going to have a social engagement that happens on a Friday, Saturday, whatever it is, right? So look at those things. The biggest thing when it comes to eating out socially with groups and friends, like I want you to be able to enjoy your favorite foods and enjoy these moments. After all, fitness should improve your life. It should not consume it, right? Unless you're stepping on a bodybuilding stage, getting like that's a different story. But for most of us, it's about being able to have that great blend of looking great naked without living in the gym. All right. So if that's something you're looking to do, you want to look great naked without living in the gym, head over to bachperformance.com/coaching, and we will show you what we are all about, how we can help you build that long-term approach where not only can you look, feel, and perform your best, but you can learn to maintain it, unlike all these 30-day challenges, all that bullshit that you see on social media, right? Like fitness is something that we need to develop. And when we develop it, even when we're busy, then we have the tools and we have the skill sets to maintain it, especially when life isn't nearly as chaotic. Finally, if you were getting a lot of value directly from these podcasts, the way that we grow, the way that we can continue to bring on awesome guests, the way that we continue to keep this show free of advertisements and all of that bullshit that really ruins the experience when you're listening to a podcast, we need your reviews. So please drop in even one line for a 5-star review on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you listen is going to play a huge role. And again, if you have any questions that we can help you with and want answered in these Q&A episodes, stay tuned to Bach Performance on Instagram. Make sure that you are asking those there and we will get you live on the show. All right. Have a great day. I'll catch you on the next one.
Hey, it's Eric here again. Now, there are 3 ways that I can help you look great naked. Number 1, if you want to grab a free copy of the Look Great Naked protocol to help you lose body fat without counting calories, then go to bachperformance.com/free training. Number 2, if you're a busy guy looking to build muscle, then I recommend checking out our Minimalist Muscle Blitz, which has helped over 1,000 men build muscle without living in the gym. Just go to minimalistmuscleblitz.com. The link will also be available in the show notes. Or number 3, and last, if you want to work with me directly and get the best results possible, apply at bachperformance.com/coaching to look great naked without living in the gym. Until next time, my friend,